If I had to distill all I've learned about living a life that will produce 30, 60, or 100-fold, like Jesus talked about in the story of the soils, and if I had to distill it down to a billboard that you could read driving by in 3 seconds, here's what I would say, is that focus plus leverage plus persistence equals 100x compounding return on life. Now, focus is knowing your calling and decluttering your life and staying on point. And leverage is knowing how to use your platform, the processes, the people, the power of the Spirit of God to get a multiplier on your time. So you don't have to run faster. You just hunker down and you savor the moments and there's no rushing to it, but you see a multiplier. But the real kicker is persistence. How could you stick with it? Because it's compounding return on life. And so it's not just 100x return, it's 100x compounding return on life. And it may seem to you that a big impact on this planet is out of reach. I hope it doesn't. But I hope you can hear in this that if you start today and you get clear and you get free and you get going and you take your unique calling and you focus on it and you apply leverage intentionally and then you plan to stick with it over time, you will see amazing impact. And I was reminded, at the Faith-Driven Movement event that I was just at, I did a talk about this. I talked about compounding return on life. And then I went and got in line to have dinner, and I had my plate, and I put some salad on it. And I said hi to the lady behind me. And she said, "You mentioned that you went to McGill University in Montreal. Are you Canadian?" And I said, "Well, yeah, my mom was Canadian. Even though I grew up in Philadelphia, I got a Canadian citizenship." And but she said, "Well, I'm Canadian." I said, "Well, where'd you grow up?" And she said, "I grew up in British Columbia." And I said, "Well, did you live in Vancouver? I mean, what a beautiful city." And she said, "No, I lived a little bit east of there, over the Cascade Mountains." And for some reason, I said to her, "Did you live in Salmon Arm?" And she looked startled. She said, "How'd you know?" And I said, "Well, in 1992, I took 100 farmers, Christian farmers, to Albania right after communism fell. And for 73 years, they had been told in their constitution, God does not exist. This was one of the most atheist countries in the world. And we had the privilege of taking 100 farmers there with the gospel, and we taught them market-driven farming because they had no idea how to run their own farms, and all of a sudden they'd been given some land. And I said, there was a farmer I took from Salmon Arm. I think he was a dairy farmer, and he owned a store downtown Salmon Arm. And I looked over and she was in tears. She said, "That was my dad. And that trip changed his life. That trip changed our family." Now think about that. 32 years later, what are the odds that I finished talking about compounding return on life? I stand in line randomly with it, and this lady stands behind me, and that we got into a conversation about Canada, and that I mentioned Salmon Arm of all places. And what it was is a little reminder for me and a story to share with you to convince you that there will be a day that if you focus and you apply leverage and you persist, you will be standing in line and someone will say, "You can't believe how what you did changed my life." And in that moment, you will be so grateful that you traded up whatever you did to gain something truly priceless.